Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lion's Den and another Blue Collar Ballers episode. Today we speak with John Huffman, who is the founder of Huffman Construction Group, which is a construction company that focuses on remodeling, both residential and commercial remodeling. And John is a really fun guy. You're going to love this conversation. He talks to us about starting a career within the construction trade space. What are sort of the common challenges, why it's important to really learn all the basic introductory skills before you start to climb the ladder, and why that becomes important later on in your business. We talk about how he scaled his business, how he scaled it too fast even, and then wanted to taper things back a little bit. Really fun guy, a lot of wisdom. He's also a coach for a lot of younger, early stage construction trades people out there. So I think you'll get a lot of value out of this episode. Check it out. So John, wanted to chat a little bit about your background first and what actually got you into remodeling in the first place. Like, did you start out as a tradesman, like in some specific category first, and then kind of like expand your knowledge, or how did that all play out?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that's exactly how it started. Was a troubled teen growing up, in and out of juvenile detention centers and things like that. So construction was really the only job I could shoot for. I mean, we're just going to be honest. But inside of that, man, it's really allowed me to have a lot of success in this industry because I understand construction in a level that a lot of general contractors and builders that are out there now, they didn't go through the trades, right? They went to school, they got their bachelor's, they took the general contractor test, they took a business class. And they're kind of figuring it out as they go. They're really good at spreadsheets. They're really good at putting critical paths together, but they don't understand the way that I understand it. And that way is I get how it goes together, right? I get the whole process of the build, from the broom to the floor, to the setting of the trim, to the tile, to what goes under the tile, what goes behind the walls, what your centers are, what the actual critical path is as far as the steps. So it's really allowed me in this industry to benefit me as I'm the sales guy now today. I'm selling the projects more than anything, or helping other entrepreneurs learn how to sell. And I always tell them, man, understand the project that you're selling. So to answer your question, troubled teen, construction, now multi-million-dollar business owner. So yeah, man, that's pretty much how it ended up in the trades and being a general contractor.
That's awesome. So when you're, like, for young people who get started in construction, what does that normally look like? Are they just carrying heavy shit around on site, or like what do they actually do as like a young person?
So listen, I'm biased, bro. I'm freaking biased. Okay. So and I've seen construction companies that hire their kids and let them be a supervisor off rip. Nobody respects that kid. Nobody. And he might end up being a halfway decent employee or supervisor or COO or whatever title that was given to him around that 30, 35 mark. Mm-hmm. I believe in all trades, any entrepreneur, any trades, any key player, they need to earn that. They need to know what it is to carry the tile, to sweep the floor. Like when I was going through the trades, you earned the tool belt. You didn't just get the tool belt because you wanted to be a carpenter. Like, you earned that tool belt. And they would tell me task, and I would come and want to learn how to cut, baseboard or whatever. And they go, well, did you finish cleaning up? Well, yeah. And then they would walk around and go, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And then I didn't get to learn how to cut the wood. But what I learned was, when I become the best laborer, when I sweep this floor with excellence, and I go and I say, hey, help me, can I help you run this base? And they went and checked my job, and I go, well, I ain't got no choice but to teach you at this point, right? Then you earn that, right? So I believe in excellence. Like, my second core value is excellence, doing the right thing regardless of the cost. But I understand excellence in every level of success. And if my leaders aren't willing to sweep the floor, then I don't want them to be my leader, right? Because I understand that cleanliness is just as important as craftsmanship, right? And I can be the best craftsman in my trade. I can put the best baseboard, the best crown mold, and I can make it wood to wood. And if my client walks on that job site and sees that it's dirty, she's not going to pay attention to the craftsmanship. All she's going to do is pay attention to how dirty that job is. And it's going to be a reflection of me, right? So to answer your question, I believe that everybody should start at that level, that entry. They should experience it. And they'll also learn to respect that position too, and honor the individuals that are sweeping the floor instead of looking at them as, oh, they're just a floor sweeper, right? So that's my take on it. I'm biased because that's how I started, right? And that's how I was looking. That's how we learned. I mean, even being a painter, Nico, you didn't just, oh, I'm going to be a painter and they gave you a paintbrush. You sanded baseboard for a year. You know, you had to sand baseboard and eat dust and do caulking. They didn't give you earned the paintbrush. And I think we've gotten away from that in the trades, man. You know, in my perspective.
I love that. I love everything you just said, honestly. So all right. So you're working your way up. You're focusing on excellence, cleanliness, craftsmanship. At what point do you realize, hey, I can go do this on my own? Like I should just go start my own business.
So, you know, I mean, me, man, ever since I was a kid, even troubled, you know, I was always, you know, always entrepreneurial. My trouble was, you know, being an entrepreneur in the wrong areas, right? But, you know, I always had big dreams and aspirations. I always knew I was meant for more, you know. Unfortunately, I just took some wrong direction. But, you know, God gave me a gift at a young age, man. When I showed up in the room, I always got all the attention. You know, that's just always who I've been, and I've recognized it at a young age. I was always willing to go left when everybody went right. And like, if everybody's going this way and I felt like going this way, I always had the kind of the attitude, well, if you want to go, I'm going this way. And I looked behind me, there's always people following me. So I always knew I was entrepreneurial. And, you know, I got in some trouble at around 24 years old. I caught some serious charges. And that's really where I ran into the Lord, and he changed my life. But I went and served for 3 years under other people until the Lord really released me and said, go do that thing. And then I only had that skill set, right? I only had, that was the only skill set I had was construction. And then the talents that the Lord gave me to articulate things and to lead. And I just put those two things together. And, you know, my wife had a 400. I called my wife and I said, babe, I'm ready to jump. I'm ready to leave. I talked to my employer at the time and I said, hey, man, I don't think you're utilizing me properly. You know, I can do so much more for your company. And he looked at me and he pointed at his face and he says, there's one face to this company and you're looking at it. And essentially what he was saying was, I'm not going to give someone else the ability to grow my company, right? And I shook his hand and I says, well, I'll do my best not to become your competition. And I called my wife and I says, let's do this. And she said, yeah, she actually got me my first paint job. And I said, what do we got in the bank? And she said, 400. I said, are we jumping? She said, let's jump. And that was, 12 years ago. And we've been grinding ever since. And it hasn't been perfect. You know, there's a lot of problems that I ran into. And, but to answer your question, man, I just took what I had. The abilities that I learned and that were given to me throughout the life that I lived at that 25 to 28 mark when I started making those decisions, and I just applied what I had. And for your viewers that are watching this, what do you have? There's a skill set. There's something. Maximize that, right? We all have something that we've been given that we can give that value back to the world. And sometimes we think that what we have isn't valuable. You know, I mean, back when I was in trades, you smoked weed and drank beer. If you're a construction worker, you're a nobody. Well, I run a multi-million-dollar company now, and I'm considered a pillar of the community. I took what I had and the talents that God gave me, and I applied it, and I brought value to an industry. And all your listeners can do the same, man. There's something that they have that can bring value. You're doing it right now. You've got a microphone and a network and a streaming, and you're interviewing people to bring value to the community. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. So now when I go to your website, you know, it looks very professional. You've got all these like case studies on there, beautiful photos of remodeled bathrooms and kitchens. And there's some commercial stuff in there, locker rooms at like gyms and that sort of thing. Some really cool stuff. But I want to rewind. So when you first went out on your own, you had I think you said $400 in the bank, and your wife said, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, how did you get started? Because you didn't have a website. You probably didn't even know you were a remodeler yet. You were just
I
sort
was
of
a painter.
any job you could get. Okay. You
Yeah.
started with painting. Okay.
Yeah. I
And
knew
so
painting
what was that
very
like?
well.
Yeah.
You know, I've done it all, but like painting, like I knew very well. I knew construction defects too, because the guy that I worked for, we did construction defects. So inside of the construction defects was usually like back pitch balconies, and there were stucco repairs. So we always painted. So we'd re-engineer the balcony or the window or whatever it was. Then we had to do the stucco repair. So we painted. So I did a lot of painting. And when there was a construction defect, interior drywall and things like that got damaged. So we always painted the house at the end. So like it gave me an understanding of how things were put together and things of that nature. So like how it started, man, was like my wife worked for a GC at the time, and he just let go of his painter. So I jumped in there. And then, I mean, I just hit the ground running. I didn't know what to do. And, you know, I don't mean to get preachy, but it's just part of who I am. You know, the word of God says, he'll direct your steps. So I just knew I had to get my feet on the ground and walk, and then he'd do the directing. So I did my part, right? Like I just went. I didn't wake up in the morning. And this is something I teach all my students too, that I coach. You know, when you don't have anything on your schedule, when you don't have a lead, or you don't have, like, sitting at home's not going to gain it. Like I went to paint stores and hung out with managers, right? Gave my card. Like I did something. If I didn't have nothing to do, I did something. I went to, you know, Naples Lumber or Raymond's Lumber or whoever, just hung out at the places that did construction and let them know. Because when Miss Susie or Mr. Jim came in there, John Huffman just left, and I'm loud. And you remember me, right? So like, they're like, oh, John, this guy, John was just here. Here's his card, right? And I just started creating that influence in the community. And it was pretty much built with word of mouth. And even today, like and here's the truth, Nico, all the Google, all that stuff, man, it's all, the only reason it benefits me today is because of the relationships that I've built of the word of mouth. And then I push them to that. Every lead that comes through that normally isn't my client. That's what we found out. Like when I get someone that calls and found me on Google, that's like a 10%, maybe an 8% success rate, right? Because I've niched myself out so well on what I do and the quality that I have, that a lot of people that are kicking tires just aren't who I am. So it's like, to be honest with you, those things haven't really dictated my success, other than it solidified me to the people that I get in front of. So if you were to call me and I walk into your house, I then introduce you to all my social media. And the reason that I do that, here's a nugget for your entrepreneurs listening. The reason that I do that is I'm now selling Nico as he's scrolling on my Facebook and my Instagram and my website while I'm at home with my family, or I'm doing a podcast with somebody. He's there now. I'm entertaining him with all of my content. So that's where those things have benefited me, such as the website and the social media and things like that.
I love that lesson. Yeah. Cause I agree. You can't really depend on the social media, like for your, you know, incoming leads. You got to get out in the community. You gotta go knock on doors. And that was an interesting one you said. I don't think many people talk about that. So you would go to like a lumber store, for example, where you've got homeowners who are going to look at different types of wood, and hey, guess who's in there? John, who is a woodworker, among many other things. I mean, that's a super smart thing to do.
I hung out at paint store. I mean, because like I said, paint stores and lumbers, trim, you know, we have a place called the Smith and Shields. It's got all the doors and trim. I went out there and hung out and drank coffee and just really made the people behind the counter my friends, you know, and even the guys that I train and I teach, that's what I tell them to do. Like, go hang out, man, go do something.
and that gets you referrals from those people in the future because they trust you.
People buy people. They buy people, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. So, okay. So you're doing whatever it takes. You're out there in the community, networking, finding referral partners, taking whatever job you can. You start to build from there. What's kind of the next step of your business? Did you, 2 years in realize, hey, I want to rebrand as Remodeling? Or was the next step like, all right, now I need to hire more people? Like what were kind of the next steps as you grew?
So I believe you got to find your niche, but I didn't know that. I didn't even, if you would have said find your niche, I'd have been like, what, in the shower? Like, what do you mean find your niche? But when you're starting out, man, whatever brings money, take it. So like, and I tell people that all the time. It takes 60 months. It's a 5-year process. You don't escape it. If you did, look around because it's coming for you. It's the Annie of an entrepreneur. You're gonna feel it. So the first 5 years, man, we just built. I had 2 partners that were like family to me. We did a lot of things wrong in the structure of that, but I just woke up one day and we had 20 employees and we're doing 3 million a year, and then I just wanted to take over the world. I'm like, man, I want $100 million construction company. I was a kid, I didn't know no better. I just thought more was better. So I just went crazy, man. And we kind of ended up in the remodel industry because I would go there to paint, and then they would mention their kitchen or their kitchen. Then I'm like, well, if we move your kitchen, well, then we got to redo your floor. And I started doing a couple of those, and it just kind of sprung into this, this remodel. And that's where my margins were, and also where the cash flow was, because a paint job might be $5,300, but one mistake, you lose your whole margin. Where a remodel's $280,000, you're getting $35,000 to $50,000 chunks. So if you got 2 or 3 of those going on at once, there's cash flow. You're invoicing, 150 to 500,000 a month. So when you make those mistakes because of the cash flow, you don't feel them as much as the small jobs, if that makes sense. So that's like, okay, I understood that. I caught that. So I went after that model. And then, we grew what was then Innovative Design Solutions to a $10 million revenue business. And I had 2 partners, and I'm going to be real with your viewers here. When you have partners, make sure the expectations are met. They were family to me. I really looked up to these guys, and we just didn't have any boundaries. We were all making the same amount of money, and we were working differently. I'm a 60-hour-a-week guy if I try to relax. So I was 90 to 100. They were living their best life while I was, and I'm not mad at them for it. It was my fault. We took out of the company. We lived out of the company. A lot of people do that, that are probably watching this. That card swipes your vacations, your gas, your eating out, and those things add up. Nobody really monitors those things, and if you do, you'll realize that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars being swiped without you realizing what's actually happening. So as we were building this monster, we were also didn't have boundaries. And what I learned was bigger wasn't better, because that monster that you create, when you're doing 10 million in revenue and you got big jobs, there's big mistakes and big issues, right? Mm-hmm. So when I come to that realization, I got hungry about 7 years ago for processes and systems, and I just got this overwhelming hunger to learn and just want to make this better. And so I started investing in coachings and things like that. And when I was bringing that to my partners, they looked at me with 3 eyes. They were old school, like, hey, we just figure it out. You know what I mean? Money and money. Well, and I was just over that. So when we stopped, man, we ended up coming to the realization we're about $1 million upside down. And at that time, we had about 50 employees, 7 trucks, showroom, and all that stuff. And I just really come to the conclusion that I would rather do 5 million or 3 million in revenue and net 20 than do 10 million in revenue and net 2, right? And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs love to flex their chest and say, I did 20 million or 50 million. And I don't really care what you did in revenue, because I did 10 million in revenue and I owed $1 million. So,
right. Exactly.
So, now, we're netting, 40% gross profit, netting 22 to 25%, doing 6 million. So what's better, right? And I'm at home for the most part, most nights. So that's how that grew. And then as I got hungry and started buying, paying for coaches, I learned the niche, right? Like I tried to do the building. I was like, man, I need to find my client. What is the geographic? What is the psychographic? Who are they? What do they do for a living? Are they retired? What's their age? Where do they live? And I really dialed that in and started saying no to a lot of things. and capitalizing on the things that I was good at and I was niched at. And that's where the growth really came as far as financially. If you look at my outfit now, I'm not nowhere near as big as I was, but financially I'm double, right? And that's what really matters. And that's kind of what I teach too, is like, we got to set our ego aside a lot of times when we're growing these businesses and really look at the profit and what's actually happening.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, this goes for businesses in any industry, really. There's sort of the natural trajectory is, like you said at the beginning, you take whatever jobs you can get, like whatever can come your way. But then if you get set in that mindset, then you continue to just take whatever jobs come your way, even as you start to scale. Yeah. And now you're becoming that monster because you're taking on jobs you really shouldn't be taking on. You got to hire extra people. Now you're huge. Expenses go through the roof. And then you reach a breaking point, which is kind of what you're saying, where you're like, wait a minute. I think it's time for me to run an efficient organization and really dial all this in. And so then you shift and you become that. But you can't really become that until you've reached a certain scale anyway. So it's like, these are like warnings you want to give to people, but it's also like, you guys all have to kind of experience.
They got to figure it out. Yeah. Right before you got on here, I was talking to one of my coaching clients, and he called me and he says, "Dang it, I hate when you're right, because when I'm telling them these things, it doesn't make sense because they haven't experienced it." Yeah. So it's like I'm just, I'm being negative or pessimistic or whatever, which I'm none of those things, but. So until they experience it, they don't understand where I'm coming from. We had an event. I'm doing the coaching and speaking, and we had an event called Mind Your Business. It was the second annual. We had 520 entrepreneurs there. But what we based the event on was freedom, because everybody goes into business for that. They go into business for financial freedom and freedom to do what they want. But what happens is that monster's created, that burden's given to you, it's placed on you, it needs to be fed. And now the freedom that you seek after for your family, the thing that you were building for the freedom has now taken your freedom, exactly. Right? And and I hate to say it, it's most entrepreneurs here in the Western world, and it's taught on Instagram and it's taught on Facebook, grind, sacrifice everything for the one thing. And it's like, no, man, you can maximize your time. You can sacrifice the creative time, meaning like put it on the schedule. Make sure that you're maximizing your day to be home with the people that you're doing it all for,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You're actually preaching to the choir. I've got a book coming out in June that talks about this exact thing. So
that's awesome, man. I'll definitely like to purchase that.
For sure. Well, talk to me a little bit about, when you're saying, you went into this like efficiency mode, like processes and systems and whatever. Like what were some of the key changes you made to your business at that time in order to go in that more efficient, process-oriented direction? Like what were you doing inefficiently that you then fixed?
So I call it controlled chaos, or crisis management. So what I was allowing to happen was the fires dictate what I did that day, or the problems. And in that, it was chaos that I thought I was controlling, but I wasn't. So I have this saying, when there's a fire, let it burn, because a lot of times it'll burn out before you ever get there, right? And you can continue to complete the things that you did. But one of the key factors to answer your question was like, what was the differentiator? The thing that like snapped me out of it was like, just the out of control, like nothing, I couldn't do enough to get out of it. Right.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that it was all ego, man, like the showroom and the vans and all these things that I had that really didn't dictate the success nor the jobs that I was receiving. And, I shrunk everything, man. Like when, I read a book, 2 books really changed my life. Is Traction by Gino Wickman. And I've studied that book like the Bible, man. And then Profit First. And those two books changed my life, man. And I read them every 90 days because I just realized that you don't need all the stuff, right? And I think, again, it's a Western culture. It's an American thing. You need more. You need the bigger office building. You need and it's all becomes a burden. So I got rid of all of that, man. I mean, we just got rid of all of it. And I got rid of even all of my employees. I got rid of all my employees. Now we do about 6 million in sales, do about a little over 4 in revenue. I got my wife runs payroll, permits, and just double checks the numbers. My daughter runs the office. So I got 2 admins. I got 1 supervisor. I'll probably get another one in the field, and myself selling. And we're rocking.
Oh, wow. That's it.
We're rocking.
5 people.
5 people.
Wow.
Know?
Yeah. And you had 50 doing 10 million in revenue previously.
Exactly. Wow. And I'm doing, again, I would say revenue, I'm like 4.3. Sales, I'm at 6 because I can't get to all, you know what I mean? But and I'm healthier than I've ever been. Like we have Airbnbs that are paid for. We got land paid for. We owe a little over 300 on our house this year. Our goal is to pay for my house off. Like we're praying by the end of this year that we're debt free. You know what I mean? And it's like, I mean, that's freedom. You know what I mean? And again, it's hard work, and it's not all, and here's another thing, knowing all the things like traction and all that and building the systems, you still have to put action behind it, right? That's the differentiator. You have to put the action behind it. The knowledge itself doesn't work. And I'm really bad at that because I'm a speaker, preacher. I like to speak, say my things, and go. Have you read Traction yet? Have you read it before?
The book Traction?
Yeah.
Yeah. All about the entrepreneurial operating system. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then there's another one called Rocket Fuel that's kind of a spin-off of that, and it talks about the visionary and the integrator.
Okay.
The visionary has 99 ideas a day, right? One of them might work. The integrator is like, slow down, let's finish this. Well, I'm a visionary. I'm the guy that's I just want to go. So for me, to discipline myself to sit down and go, okay, we know the things that work now. Now let's make sure we implement them, train properly. So that's where the real discipline and the real wealth at is, being able to learn the knowledge and then sit still long enough to implement it.
Do you have an integrator on your team, or you just?
Okay, yeah. You do. Yep. So my partner Bryce in my consulting, he's an integrator. He's got visionary in him too. He's an anomaly. And then my wife's very much so an integrator. My wife is. When they say you opposites attract, that's what happened with us. She's the opposite.
Yeah. Nice.
If she could lock me to a seat and make me sit still, she would.
And she's been with you through all of this from the moment you.
Not with the other partners. Not with the other partners. No.
Got it.
But when I left those, and here's another thing, a lot of people say don't get involved with your wife. I disagree with that. You just need to learn each other's roles. I don't get in her role and she don't get in my role. And when we do, we remind each other. You weren't invited here. I'll invite you if I want you in here. And it works great. Exactly.
Yeah, I actually work with some of my family, siblings. Also, my wife is on the team. And that's the same takeaway I had too. It's like, as long as everybody has their lane, it can still be copacetic. You can still have a happy family. But once you are the boss of someone in your family, that's where things go off course. That can't be.
Yeah, you got it. And here's the thing, man. I mean, you got to remember 100 years ago, families were the enterprise. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know where we got away from it, but now it's like, tell your kids to go dream and do what they want. And that's not, wealthy families understood enterprise and finding each other's strengths and building something from it. The family unit was that. It was the unit. And we've gotten away from that drastically as a culture. I think every other culture still does it but us.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Okay, last topic real quick, and then I want to wrap things up. So because you have reached this level of success, you have much higher profitability, much higher efficiency, much more time freedom available to you. You've also started to take on this additional role of being a consultant or coach to other tradespeople who, many of them I'm sure are earlier in their career than you are. Mm-hmm. So, which I think is awesome. I think the fact that you're giving back now is amazing. So tell me about that. You meet quarterly with this group of tradespeople?
Yeah, so we have a weekly coaching call, virtual. We got about 30 people on the call. We meet every Wednesday at 7:30 to 9 for 90 minutes. And then quarterly we get together as a group, but we offer other people to come into. I mean, that way it's growing the call as well. And we just dive in. Let's say it's a workshop. That's what we call a workshop. We dive in the last 12 weeks of what we've been going over every week. We dive in and like go through it. Maybe it's vision, what's your 10-year, what's your 3-year, what's your 1, how are we getting there? What's your goals? What's your widgets? How many sales do you want? What does that look like when you sell this much? How many employees? How many vans? So it's like making the entrepreneur think like, oh, I want to do 10 million a year. Okay, what does that look like? How do you do 10 million a year? Do you need a shop? Oh, I don't know. What do you need, an office? Well, I'm thinking I'm going to the office. How many employees are going to be in the office? So it's like learning, like, here's your 10-year goal, but this is what's needed to support that. Here's your 3, here's your 1, so that you have that, so we break down that workshop. And then we have one yearly where we do a big event. Like I just said, the Mind Your Business, we do one a year. And, the reason is the passion. I have a ministry called the Harvest Recovery Ministry. I dealt with addiction, and, that's where the Lord really lets me speak and give back. And then I've been an entrepreneur that's been hurt and, sacrificed his family and his marriage and gotten debt and all those things. So it's another experience. So the Lord's got me in both of those areas, just giving back. Right. So it's like, I'm trying to prevent people from living that life of addiction. That's my ministry. Now I want to bring Christ to the marketplace, right? Like, hey man, let's don't sacrifice everything that we're seeking for, or we're trying to bless. We don't want to sacrifice those things for success, right? Success is those things. So it's like, man, that's just been my journey, and it's been great, man. And it's definitely an anomaly. It's different. I don't get invited to speak a lot of places because my faith comes out, and I've battled with that a little bit, but it is what it is. And if I'm supposed to speak about it, I'm going to be invited and do it. But the Lord has given me a platform to do it. You know what I mean? I was on the back porch, thinking about it. I'm like, man, I got these things and no one invites me to do it. They know that I'm doing it. And I heard the Lord say, John, I've given you the talents. I've given you the resources. Why are you waiting on them? And that's how it was birthed. And I did my first event with the resources he gave me and the talents he gave me. And it's just been growing and growing and growing. And he's like, don't wait for someone else's platform. I've given you that. Go build it. Right. So that's how that spiraled. And it's been such a blessing, man, because, I'm in a mastermind called C12, and it's a Christian entrepreneur mastermind. And when I told them how bad off we were at Innovative, because we looked so successful from the outside, I was just waiting for them to kind of put their head down and shake it at me like, dumb kid, but they all were like, oh yeah, I was, 30 million upside down. And it is. And you're in like the relief, the peace, I was just like, I was set free. Like, oh, I'm not a loser. I'm not, I'm not an idiot. I'm not, all these things that I thought I was. Here I am, kid that's not educated. What made me think I could be an entrepreneur? What made me, that was the thoughts that I was having. And when you hear these, in C12, it's, lawyers and doctors, and, they're doing hundreds of millions a year. And when you hear them go, dude, welcome, you're here. Like, this is what makes you. I was like, man, I want to give that to people. I want to give people that rest. I don't want them to think that they're the only one that have their marriage struggling. They're the only one that's upside down. They're the only one that's maxed out. Here, it's happened to me too, and this is how I got out of it. And these are the things that I did to get out of it. And here are the things that I'm doing to prevent it from happening again, right? And I just want to overflow my cup and just give it to as many people as I can.
So for anybody listening who wants to hear you speak or wants to join your, weekly, call, how do they get in touch with you? How do they sign up for that? Do they have to apply? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, johnhuffmanspeaks.com, and there's a form right there they can fill out. And then ultimately Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, I'm under Real, REAL, Real John Huffman. They can message me there, give me a follow. And yeah, man, I'd love to have them on the call, or if they just need an ear or they're going through something, they can email me as well at johnhuffmanspeaks.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, John, thank you very much. We'll link to all that in the show notes, of course. And really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate the wisdom you shared. And thanks for joining me in the Lion's Den.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, bro.